Every time you tap your card, check your balance online, or send money, you're putting a ton of trust in your bank. But have you ever stopped to think about all the other tech companies your bank has to trust with your data? Today, we're going to pull back the curtain on the complex and honestly kind of fascinating rules that act as the digital guardians for our entire financial system.
To really get a handle on how all this works, we're going to follow the entire life cycle of a bank's relationship with a tech provider. We'll start at the very beginning, how they pick a partner, then we'll look at the ironclad contracts they have to build, see how they keep an eye on them day to day, and finally, how they make sure it's a clean, safe breakup when things are over. It's the whole shebang from start to finish.
All right, so first things first. Why do we even need these incredibly detailed rules? Well, it's all about tackling a massive, very modern problem in banking that comes down to one single, critical idea.
And here it is. This is the absolute key. See, a modern bank isn't some standalone fortress anymore. It's more like a massive, interconnected network. And that network? It's only as strong as its weakest link. A single vulnerable tech partner could become a wide-open backdoor into the entire bank and to your data.
Okay, so the people who write these rules are pretty smart about this. They know you can't just apply the same Fort Knox-level security to every single piece of software a bank uses. So the rules are tiered. They're based on just how critical a system is, not just to the bank, but to you and your money.
Let's start with the big ones, the core systems. You can think of these as the digital heart of the bank. They're the engines that process your deposits, manage loans, and handle wire transfers. If these systems go down, the bank literally stops working. That's why they get the absolute highest level of protection. No questions asked.
And from there, everything else gets sorted into classes. Class 1 is all the stuff you actually interact with. The banking app on your phone, the ATM on the corner. Class 2 is what's running behind the scenes, like the software a call center agent uses to look up your account. And then Class 3 is the deep internal stuff that just keeps the bank running as a business, like HR or accounting software.
And this table really shows how it all works in practice. For the most critical stuff, those core and Class 1 systems, these strict security rules apply to every single contract. Doesn't matter if it's for $1 or $1 million. But for the less critical internal systems, the rules only kick in for bigger projects. In this case, the threshold is about 10 million Taiwan dollars. It's a really practical, risk-based way to do things.
So a bank needs a new piece of technology. How do they even start? Well, before a single piece of paper is signed, they have to do a ton of homework. This is the super important due diligence stage.
And believe me, this is not just a casual background check. It's a mandatory, deep dive. The bank has to analyze every potential risk, spell out the exact security standards the vendor must meet, and then evaluate them on everything from their technical skills all the way down to who actually owns the company. They really leave no stone unturned.
Okay, so once a secure partner has been vetted and chosen, the next step is to build the contract. But this isn't just your standard business agreement. This is a legal fortress designed from the ground up to protect the bank and, ultimately, us.
This quote really nails it. When the stakes are this high, you just can't rely on assumptions or a simple handshake. The contract has to be the bedrock. It's where every single security responsibility gets spelled out in black and white.
And the rules are super specific about what has to be in there. The contract has to lock everything down, it defines exactly who's responsible for what, it prevents the vendor from just handing off the work to someone else without permission, and it lays out the specific security controls and, importantly, the penalties if they fail. And it goes even further. It's not just about setting expectations, it's about enforcing them. The contract must give the bank the right to audit the vendor. And the vendor has to legally promise that their code is clean. That means no malware and absolutely no hidden backdoors. That's a huge one.
So, the contract is signed, the project is live, but security isn't a set it and forget it kind of thing, right? Now comes the long haul, the watchful partnership. This is all about the ongoing oversight that's required for the entire life of the project. You can see here that security is absolutely a two-way street. The bank has to actively manage things, assess risk, and conduct audits. At the same time, the vendor has to train its own people, report any problems immediately, and, of course, deliver secure code. Both sides have to be constantly engaged for this to work.
Okay, so that all sounds good on paper, but how does a bank actually know its partner is doing what they promised? Well, the regulations don't just rely on trust. They give banks some pretty powerful tools to verify that the rules are being followed.
And they've got options depending on how risky the project is. For a lower risk vendor, maybe just reviewing their own self-assessment report is enough. But for a partner handling a critical core system, the bank can demand a full audit from an independent third party, or even send its own security team to do an on-site physical inspection of their operations.
Now, eventually, every business partnership comes to an end. But in the world of finance, you can't just shake hands and walk away. A messy breakup could leave huge security holes wide open. That's why this last step, the clean and safe exit, is just as critical as all the steps that came before it.
And there's a strict checklist for this. First, another risk assessment, just to make sure nothing is missed. Then, the bank has to actually supervise the vendor to make sure every last bit of bank data is either returned or securely destroyed. And finally, the last and most important step. Every single access point, from keycards to network logins, is immediately and permanently shut down.
So when you look at all this, you have to ask, in our crazy, interconnected financial world, are these rules actually enough? Well, they create an incredibly powerful framework, a real defense-in-depth strategy that covers the entire relationship. But a framework is only as strong as the people who build with it. The ultimate defense isn't just the rules on paper. It's the constant, daily vigilance of the people inside every bank who are tasked with guarding our financial world.